Amrita told me to record my intros at the end because I would have more ideas of what to say at that point. And for the most part, it really works. But sometimes I'm still just sitting here like, I have no idea what I should say as an intro to this video, but I can't go heat up my dinner until I say something. So maybe that's an intro. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. I don't know if this is a common video or it's just a video that multiple people I follow have done. I think I've seen a few people do this. I don't know. If I'm stealing someone's idea that like just they do, please tell me. I'm doing the highest rated books I've read video. It's not a tag exactly because there's no questions or anything. I'm just going to go through on Goodreads, sort all the books I've read by highest rated, and then talk through, tell you about them. I didn't plan for this video because I didn't want to look at the list in advance, and I sort of thought, other than looking at the list, what is there? So I don't know what books are going to be on here, but let's find out. The first book is Building on River by Jean Van Loon, which is kind of funny because if you saw my least rated books I've read video, which I will link up here, in that one I sorted on number of ratings and talked through the really obscure ones that I've read. So it was the top of that list, and it makes sense because there's only, I think there's like 2 or 3 ratings total, and one of them is my 5 stars. So this has a 4.6. I've talked about this book so much, I can't remember when I last mentioned it, but it was very recently, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. It's a poetry collection that's also sort of a biography. It's really cool. It was in my 2020 favorites. You don't need to know more than that, do you? The next book is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. I think a lot of Harry Potters are going to be in here. I read them a long time ago. I read them as a child. I reread them once or twice as an adult. I am no longer reading those. Do not agree with J.K. Rowling. I do not agree with the views she is spreading and the harm that she is doing. I'm not going to mention the rest of them. I'm going to consider them as a series. We don't need to talk about them anymore, do we? This one does have an average rating of 4.56. Next up is something that is, I think, much more useful and although not at all a substitute from the previous book, much more worth reading, and that is 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act, Helping Canadians Make Reconciliation with Indigenous Peoples a Reality by Bob Joseph. I think he's an Indigenous chief, or maybe he's just an Indigenous elder who has worked in reconciliation and helping educate Canadians on the harm of colonialism in Canada, what it did to the Indigenous peoples, and helping move forward and be productive in fixing the issues that we are experiencing now. This is a really, really educational short book about the Indian Act, which is the legislation which sort of governs the relationship between the government of Canada and the Indigenous peoples of Canada. It is a very old, very, very problematic piece of legislation, and this talks a bit about some of the different things that are included in it. By no means all, but sort of 21 highlights. It looks at what the law is, what the intent or theoretical intent of the law is, or was, and then what impact the law actually has in implementation. I thought it was so useful to have read. It has an average rating of 4.55. Switching back to some pop fantasy, we have A Storm of Swords, A Song of Ice and Fire, number 3 by J.R.R. Martin, with an average rating of 4.53. I think this is the last of the Game of Thrones books that I actually read. I think I started the 4th book and then never finished it. I just wasn't that into the series. I liked the first 3, but they took me like a year to read, and I kept hitting characters that I wasn't interested in reading, so I stopped. And then I just wouldn't pick the book back up for like 3 months, and then kept happening. So I said, you know what, these aren't igniting my passion. I don't have that much reading time because I was reading these when I was in university, and I just didn't finish. Then we get to another legend of fantasy, although this one even more legendary, The Return of the King, 3rd book in The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, also with an average rating of 4.53. I know which one I'm picking. And if you've been around for a little while, you will know that it's going to be the Tolkien. I'm an increasingly big fan of The Lord of the Rings. I recently read The Return of the King in December. It was phenomenal. It was amazing. I loved it even more than I had the previous times that I had read it. This one, I think, well earns its place in the list. Apparently I've read 2 editions of Return of the King because the next book on the list is also The Return of the King, but we'll skip that. Then we get to Saga Volume 2 by Brian K. Vaughn. This is a series of comics that I've been reading the collected editions of. Talk a bit about my reading experience with this series in my book series I'm definitely continuing soon video, so check that out if you want to know why I own 9 and have only read 4 of these books that I quite like. Volume 2 had an average rating of 4.52 stars and I gave it 5 stars, so apparently I liked it and thought it earned its place. Then we have right below that with 4.51 Saga Volume 3, also by Brian Vaughn. Also really liked this one. Let's not include that in the count because it's the same series, so let's just skip that one and get to more different books, because that's what we're really here about. Another hit, another one that fully deserves to be here at 4.48 average rating, Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. This is one of the City Watch novels. I think it's number 6 from what Goodreads is telling me, and it's the 29th overall Discworld book. In this one, if I remember correctly, and don't come for my Discworld fan badge if I get this wrong, please. I think in this one, Captain Vimes of the City Watch travels back in time and inspires his younger self, and I think there's a revolution. I'm pretty sure that this is this one. You can throw tomatoes, but please don't throw me out of the fandom if that was wrong. It's a great book though. I'm really excited to get to it in my reread. We have another Harry Potter, we'll skip that. To get to Secondhand Time, The Last of the Soviets by Svetlana Alexievich with 4.45 stars. This was a good but very interesting and different book. I read this in 2020, so I should remember it better, but I think I am correct in saying that it's sort of like an oral history almost. If I remember correctly, the text is either entirely or almost entirely transcriptions of stories that people have told the author. She went around after the fall of the Soviet Union and interviewed a whole bunch of people in Russia, and I think some of the countries that were part of the Soviet Union, like I think there's a woman in Belarus who's interviewed, and just normal people from all walks of life type thing, and interviews them about their experiences. I really enjoyed reading this, but I didn't know that's what it was when I picked it up and when I started reading it, so I think I was a bit disoriented and couldn't properly appreciate how it worked. However, it was really fascinating, and I think she has done a whole bunch of books in this style, or like of this format, so maybe I'll try another one, and maybe going in knowing what to expect, it'll work better. Yes, this is indeed nonfiction. I just went and checked because I realized I was going to sound super dumb if this was actually like short story, like imagined stories, but no, it is nonfiction. Having now determined that, we can go and look at the final of the 10 books that I have read that have the highest average rating on Goodreads. I should have done it in reverse, but then I would have spoiled myself, so maybe next time I'll have my partner scroll down or something. What you have not in any way been waiting for, the last book, is the Jeeves Omnibus Volume 1. Jeeves number 5, 7, and 2 by P.G. Wodehouse. So for those of you who aren't familiar, P.G. Wodehouse was like a British humor writer, sort of. I think that's what you would call him. Writing in the early 20th century, and the Jeeves and Wooster series, or the Jeeves series, is one of his more famous works. There was a TV show with Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry, which is very funny. If you're wondering if it's related to Ask Jeeves, I'm pretty sure it is. Anyways, Wooster is this ridiculous young man who's pretty hopeless and very upper class in a silly way, and Jeeves is his inflappable butler who fixes everything, and Wooster's always going off and getting himself accidentally engaged or into all sorts of messes by promising to do things for various nagging aunt type characters, and Jeeves always figures out the perfect solution to every problem and fixes everything. Speaking of which, I think I know what I'm doing tonight after I finish filming this. I'm supposed to read, but I'm going to just watch Jeeves and Wooster. Anyways, this is a collected edition with I think 3 books in it that I have. It has an average rating of 4.45 stars, which I didn't love the books when I read them, but that was over 5 years ago now, so I'm almost wondering if I should give them another try, and maybe I would like them more now? Maybe I'll do that tonight. There's too many things I want to do tonight, and it's a Wednesday night, and like I have work tomorrow, so I can't do them all. Before I go off and do any of that though, that is the end of this list. These were the 10 books off my Goodreads with the highest average rating. Let me know down below, are there any that surprised you by being here? Are there any you expected to see here that I hadn't read? What are some of yours? If you have made a video like this, please let me know because I want to go check it out. And if you'd like to do one, please do. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.